I want to talk about Karp. So the book came out February 18th. It is going kind of viral. It was number 4 at one point on Amazon's bestseller list. Here is Karp talking about it, and then we'll get into the marketing around the book.
I don't think in win-lose. I think in domination. So I don't like this win-lose thing because it kind of presupposes okay to lose. I like and I think domination is important because it's very hard to build. Like, it's very hard to build a business. And one of the real reasons it's hard is you've got to sit next to someone who is annoying you every cell in your body every day. And they may be right. So it's like every day you're dealing with somebody who is really annoying and they're wrong 9 times out of 10. But the 10th time they save your life. And so I think if it's just about money, if it's just about winning, if it's just about having prestige, for me, that's not enough to do that.
The book obviously goes deeper about Silicon Valley technology, what it means to embrace Western values. Dom, I know you started reading it. Any thoughts on the book so far?
Yeah, I'll just this paragraph in the opening preface sums up why I only have 3 stocks really that predominantly have 90% of my portfolio. It says, few asked what needed to be built and why. For decades, we have taken this focus and indeed obsession in many cases by the technology industry on consumer culture for granted, hardly questioning the direction, and we think misdirection of capital and talent to the trivial and ephemeral. Much of what passes for innovation today, of what attracts enormous amounts of talent and funding, will be forgotten before the decade is out. And when you just think about that and simmer on that, what those 3 founders are doing is much bigger impact to our world for the next decades and decades and decades beyond. And you could, probably put, I don't know the founder of Rocket Lab, but companies like that are looking to really get out there and change the world. Those are the type of companies you want to invest in, and you should be able to have the conviction to weather the storm because you know that they're pointing towards a true north, which Karp is, and his book illustrates that. And all 3 of those CEOs and all 3 of those companies are some of the hardest companies to actually get hired in, and they have some of the best cultures that are very flat organizations where there is no, Elon might walk by you in the factory right there and ask you a question. Or Karp may come by in your brainstorm hackathon and say, I think you're wrong. So I think you got to really look at those things. I think there's just so much that people look on spreadsheets. I think there's so much more in qualitative pieces that you get to look at. And if you bet on a person that, is shown time and time again, and this book just gives me even more conviction in their mission.
Matt, your thoughts on this book and basically it going viral, and it became a New York Times bestseller as well this week.
I haven't had the opportunity to read it, so I can't really comment on that. But I did think it was pretty interesting that the stock peaked the same day that it came out. But I think that's just a weird coincidence.
Did it? Did we peak at February 18th? We did? Okay. I did not know that. Here's a good comment right here from the chat that I think is a good question. Someone says, I'm bullish Palantir and all, but just funny how Elon's work on Doge is framed as a distraction, but Karp's writing a book is good for Palantir, kind of implying, wouldn't this mean that Karp is distracted? Amir, any thoughts on that?
No, I think that's very, very different because the book furthers Palantir's agenda and ethos and mission statement, while Doge is frankly very large distraction in my opinion. I mean, he's not present. Now, you could say that Tesla is mature to the point where Elon being away for a couple of months is not the end of the world, and he seems to keep up to date with FSD schedules and stuff like that, and the robo-taxi is coming out in a couple of months. So you could make that argument, but it's very, very different. Like, it's not a distraction for Karp to write a book that essentially, to my understanding, I haven't got my copy yet, but to my understanding, like, dismantles legacy way of thinking about tech and furthers the way that Palantir thinks about tech. So I think it's the opposite. It's actually strengthening Palantir that he actually took the time to write this book. I think it's not a distraction at all. It's a very different dynamic there.
both of those, one, the book was written a year ago, so it's not like he wrote it anytime recently. The book was done a whole year ago. And two, what Elon and what this book is meant to do is to really get our technology companies and the people that read the book to think about an American first way of thinking, which our culture and society has completely abandoned and what our country was founded on. It's really sad. It only takes 2 generations for something to completely just be washed out from tradition. So I think he just felt it was necessary, and obviously what Elon's doing is we can all agree very necessary in our government. So we've strayed quite a bit from what our country and what technology was in the 40s and 50s and how they participated versus now.
You know, with the comments regarding spreadsheets, I might not even read the book. I might torch it, you know.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I don't think a book tour is distracting. I think it's the ability for Karp to reach different audiences, which is kind of the thesis I've had since I heard a book was coming out. And it's a chance for audiences to know about Palantir and to learn about this company, right? And when you come at New York Times bestseller, it's just your message being magnified, which is what the job of a CEO is supposed to do. Elon is trying to solve the deficit, which is a little bit harder of a problem than going on a bunch of podcasts and talking about your book. So I do think if it's a distraction in the sense that it takes a couple hours a week from Karp's life to go do some interviews, but that the ROI on that I think is much bigger than that. Arnie, any thoughts on Karp's book going viral this week?
Well, I believe every CEO tries to find his best way to optimize the return on the time invested. So in the case of Elon, for instance, people now criticize him for spending time at Doge rather than spending time on Tesla. But what if that is actually the smartest way to open the doors but truly unlock the value of Tesla? And frankly, I believe focusing the government into stuff that Elon thinks is important eventually will pay off for Tesla. With Karp, is a similar dynamic. The fact that now he has an asset as a book that is very, very well received, that there is a very good market fit with what people start to realize that, we need to be competitive in technology. We can't really sleep. And we see this also from what I like to follow in terms of institutional investors that understand technology. Like there is a broader acceptance that there is the need of a technological reindustrialization in the US. And I believe this talks well to what is happening. Like the interviewer essentially asked, but you wrote this book last year, and it seems like you wrote it like last week, because that perfectly matches what is the current sentiment and gives an explanation and a direction. So essentially, when we invested in Palantir, we were not only invested in the business generating free cash flow, but essentially we bet that this guy actually had some value that was not really appreciated by the market. And it turns out that with Alex Karp essentially being appreciated even by Donald Trump, we set a record of how strongly Alex Karp is perceived. There is not only one guy that is important into the niches, in the underground, in the shadows, but even publicly is perceived as a person as strong as Elon Musk, able to shape the direction of not only Palantir, but also a movement, creating a movement inside the government and inside the thinking groups. So I'm very positive of Karp sharing this book, and I'm super happy to see that he also timed it very well. Like the fact that Palantir is now perceived as a good company makes his personal brand like loop with the reputation of the business and each other. So Karp and Palantir have never been in a more strong position, And frankly, everything that amplifies this perception is also good for the business, but also good for the US, because the US, from outside, it seems like it lost a little bit its way. It started thinking too much of things that are important, but are marginally important compared with the US needs to prosper in order for the whole world to stay competitive and safe.
Right.
You know, I love that comment that he wrote it a year ago, but it seems like he wrote it last week. And that's been the case with Karp like forever. That's the thing that we've been saying and noting. Not only like, first and foremost, the business. They stated that, well, this is software that people need, but they don't yet know it. Like we are X amount of years ahead. And then we had Karp start predicting geopolitical events like years before it happened. We had Karp tell analysts what they will be thinking in a couple of years before it happened. And now we have this, like the man is truly something else. Like, well, what do the kids say these days? Like built different, or is that?
Dude, you are a kid. What are you talking about? Like, but yes, absolutely. He is built different.
No, he is him. I think that's what
him. No, you're tapped in.
He's him.
You're tapped in. Absolutely.